Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I'm so very happy to see you here on tonight on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, and the other places where we can be found, LinkedIn as well. I want to say good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show in store for you on tonight. We hope that you join us. Do us a big favor. Make sure that you're sharing so that people can know that we are on tonight. Make sure that you are sharing so that people can know that we are on tonight. I want to just say a few things. I know that this is the first day of the government shutdown, and we all were hoping and praying that it would not go this way, but here we are. And so I just want to encourage those who are caught up in the midst of this government shutdown and not really knowing what's going to happen. We need to continue to pray for our nation, continue to pray for this government, continue to pray for each other. We are in perilous times. I hope that you all can see it and know it for yourself, not because somebody is telling you, or not because somebody else experiencing it, but because it's real. It's just real life. It's happening right before our eyes, and I am hoping that we could continue to move forward through this. I'm annoyed that they just couldn't get it together. I'm annoyed that uh, humanity is not being uplifted, that people are being treated as bargaining tools and bargaining chips in the world. And we need to pray for everyone. And so I'm going to ask that you all share. This is going to be a very powerful episode on tonight, and I want you to share with your family, with your friends. I'm glad that you're here with me tonight. I ask that you please excuse Bishop Flunder tonight. She is unable to make it, and we ask that you continue to keep her in your prayers as well. Again, please keep Bishop Flunder in your prayers. All is well. Just that something came up at the very last minute and we had to make a change. All right. I see you all coming in. I want to shout you out. And so who do I see here tonight? Always faithful. Thank you, Chuck Hunt. Make sure you all put your name, where you're from, in the chat. I'll actually put where you're from in the chat so that I can shout you out. All right. Chuck Hunt is here from Monroe, Louisiana. We say good evening to you. Our dear brother Albert Reed is here from Kylene, Texas. God bless you. Maria Harris is here from Denver, Colorado on YouTube. Thank you for being here tonight. Darlene Connor was here, Queens, New York, representing. Glad that you're here. Bishop Bonnie Rad and T-Fam is here. Refiners Fire via Las Vegas. Thank you for being here tonight. Reginald Nichols is here, Stockton, California. And we're going to continue to share with folks, let folks know that we are on, that they should be a part of this conversation on tonight, because it's an important conversation, right? And we want others to be able to hear what it is that we have to say. All right. So we say, God bless you on tonight. Okay, let me bring my guest on. She's waiting in the wings, and want to make sure that we give her the honor that is due her. I see you, Anthony Bailey. Thank you for joining. Dr. Anthony Bailey, Sacramento, California. God bless you. Reverend Dr. Stephanie M. Crumpton is an associate pastor of practical theology at McCormick Theological Seminary, but she is also the author of the book that we're going to talk about, We Gonna Be All Right, Resistance and Healing in Black Movement Spaces, 2012 through 2021. And let me just say before I bring her out, I feel like Dr. Crumpton is bringing a prophetic word about resistance, about healing, and about hope in Black women's spaces. And I feel like it's about what it means for all of us as we navigate these tumultuous times right now. And so I'm grateful for Dr. Crumpton tonight. Dr. Crumpton, will you please greet our online audience?
Yes, I will. First of all, Bishop Brown and the TFAM community, Beyond the Gatekeepers, everybody who is online, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this evening's conversation. I'm grateful also for all of the Black activists and organizers who were kind enough, thought that what I was asking them was a worthy question for them to actually respond to, which then has become this book. So I'm grateful to be here, excited to share. Let's get it.
Awesome. So glad about it. Michelle Hughes, we see you, Reverend Michelle Hughes. Chicago is here. And Hilda Lloyd is here. We see you. Baltimore Unity Fellowship is here in the house as well. And as people come in, I'll continue to shout you out. Make sure you're sharing and letting folks know that we're on. Colette Walker is here from St. Louis. Thank you, Reverend Colette. And Natasha Robinson is here. YouTube. Chi-Town is in the house. So Chi-Town is representing
Chi-Town is thick tonight. Yes.
They are thick tonight. They're going to be out here. Y'all do me a favor.
Home is thick tonight. Yes.
That's right. I love it. You need to have your home have your back, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dr. and Minister David is here from Harlem. So Harlem got your back too.
Okay.
All right. Yes. All right, Dr. Crumpton, you first of all tell me why you wrote this book. That's the first question I ask every author. So tell me the reason, what brought you to this.
Yeah, so I first started working on this book, surprisingly, in 2014. It was 2014, and it was the deaths of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. I'm sorry, Michael Brown and Eric Garner.
Mm-hmm.
They were killed horrifically, and I remember thinking, I'm not going into the streets as an activist because I'm not going to do it. I know better than
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do something. And I remember it was also my first semester teaching as the only Black woman on the faculty at a new seminary, or the only full-time person of color, now that I think about it. And I remember being very frustrated and thinking, I don't want to go teach these people. My people are being literally killed in the streets. I don't want
Yeah.
to. And it's a very transparent way of saying how I was feeling at that
Sure.
moment. And I remember clearly standing there in the kitchen washing the dishes and saying, this is your work.
Yeah.
And so what I started to listen to and watch were the Black activists and organizers who were also my seminary students at the time, going back and
Mm-hmm.
forth between class and also direct actions in Ferguson and New York, and watching how frustrated they were and how tired they were.
Yeah.
And also their big frustration, and this is what caught me around scholarship around this, their big frustration was that they were angry because they did not see the Black church showing up in the historic or traditional ways that they thought or had expected the Black church
Mm-hmm.
to show up. And at the time, my question became, how can we support Black activists and organizers who are doing this work? I
Yes.
continued to do interviews, and over time, my question had to shift. I realized how naive my question was, and the question then
Mm.
became, what can we learn from Black
Yeah.
activists and organizers about how they are resisting and healing in the middle of justice work? And so the work came about as a response to what I was seeing in the streets, but also to the respect that I developed for Black activists and organizers for how they were doing what they were doing while they were struggling. It wasn't
Yeah.
perfect, but what I can say is that there was more to learn than what I thought that there was at the beginning of the project. I wanted to do something, and it became an opportunity to share their voices and stories in a book form.
Awesome. Well, I can tell you did an excellent job. And
Thank you.
you brought me right to my first question, Dr. Crumpton. So your book draws from about 37 or so lived stories from
Mhm.
organizers, again, working on the front lines of justice, right? They give their honest narratives, about how exhausted they are, about hope, about community care. And I want to know from you, how did these stories challenge or expand your own understanding of what healing really looks like in movement spaces?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is actually the first one in the second chapter, which is titled White Retaliation and Black Resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually about mental health amongst movement workers. And one of the first questions that I asked everybody, especially earlier on in the study, because mind you, I was interviewing people across a few years. One of the first questions that I asked them was about the role of hope in their
Yeah.
work. And I just am so grateful that very early on, Anana Harris Paris broke me of that question. And she said, hope is not why we're doing this work. Hope does
Mm-hmm.
not, it's not hope that's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
She said, actually, and she kind of knocked me back a little bit, but thank God for my training to say, okay, you've been knocked back. But the point is not to just be knocked back and irritated that as a scholar, someone has corrected you, but to lean in and say, what can I learn? And what
Sure.
she helped me understand was that she wasn't in it because of hope. She was in it because of determination. She was in it as a result of a sense of responsibility and a sense of accountability to her community, but also to her ancestors and elders, and also the generations that would come. So the first thing that it did for me as a person of faith was to kind of help me require that I re-examine my assumptions that
Mm.
hope and faith are what get us through this work.
Yeah.
And if it is hope and if it is faith, it's probably not in the ways in which I, as a church woman, have been, kind of configured to believe that that's how it showed up. So that was one of the first things that knocked me back a bit and that I had to learn. And it really did reshape the project very much.
Wonderful. I see Elliot Morris is here from Chicago, Pastor Siegfried Benton, Temple Hills, Maryland. Hello, thank y'all for joining, and y'all share this for me, please. So I told you that I had some set questions, but I also want to give you an opportunity to read from the book. But before I do that, I want to give you a second question
Mhm.
that I think is going to help. And I want people to really, really, really listen to what we're saying here. I see you, Christopher Williams, and I see you, Lee Arne from Las Vegas. Thank you, Reverend Lee, for being on. Throughout the book, Dr. Crumpton, you insist that resistance and care are, I want to say, inseparable. That we can't fight for justice while ignoring our souls. So I think my question is to you tonight: in times when resources are scarce, time is scarce, funds are scarce, emotional energy is scarce, how do you counsel activists to balance caring for themselves and their communities while staying faithful to the work? And let me just tell you why. Because right now we're in a space. You wrote this book and you thought it was going to come out a couple of years ago, but I feel like, it is right now. This is a right now book for right now. Yes, things happen between that time period, but for what's happening right now, this is the book. And I encourage people, I'm going to tell you all right now that you all need to purchase the book. And you can see that in the chat. I believe that Pastor Sue has already indicated where you can purchase it, Mahogany Books in DC. Okay. But I also know that she's going to give away a book, and we're grateful for that. If you type hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers in. So you're going to want this book, and you're going to want this book for your church, for your social justice organization, for your movement, for your chaplaincy, for all of the things that you do. This is the reason why you need to get this book. And so I want to say that question again. These are times resources are scarce, government shutdown, federal funding is low or none. People can't get that money to do the work that they need to do. Time, funds, everything, emotional energy. How do you counsel activists to balance caring for themselves and their community while staying faithful to the work?
Bishop Brown, what I would say is I'd love to be able to say I'm counseling them to do X, Y, and Z. The truth of the matter is that I learned from them what they are already doing, and I want to amplify that.
Let's do that.
The first thing I would say is, on one level, absolutely, people are losing jobs, people are losing healthcare, right? All of the things that you just stated are true. Yes. And at the same time, there are ways that we have always made time in the middle of scarcity, such that scarcity does not kind of become the overarching kind of rule of how we're going to be. We've always had a way of knowing what's going on. We don't deny what's going on, but then we create these spaces and these opportunities and these moments. The question is whether or not we're willing to pay attention to the moments, and whether or not we have the communal support to decide that this is what we're going to do while we also know these other things are also happening. Yes. So I want to read a piece from one of the activists. His name is Andre, and Andre is also a pastor and also a scholar who took his time. They were talking about rage, right? The role of rage in activism. And I think not only are we sad, not only are we tired, but I think many of us are angry, very angry. And I asked him about rage, and he says, I would respond with a question by saying, why harness it, also as known rage? Why harness rage itself at all? Rage itself is holy. So rage can stand many times by itself. And the fact that others may not understand Black rage, and that's what we're really talking about, others may not be able to understand it or give different articulations and interpretations for it, does not mean that we need to change it or rearrange it or act strange to it. That rage is holy and just. It's a foundation of what it means to be human. And for us who are not at that moment of total lament and total frustration, we need to be the arbiters of that person's rage. So for me, if I'm at a moment of uncontrollable anger and frustration, I need a community around me, not only to affirm my anger and my rage, my holy rage, but also to articulate the reason why I'm feeling this way to other people. So in hopes of now, here's the hope piece, in hope that somebody will begin to understand. And this is something I really worked on. I really looked at it from a rhetorical point of view, because right now in this country, there are people that could act out, have rage. People could actually go and take over a Capitol and be looked at it as if that's justified, that it is right, that you just have to understand them. Matter of fact, they don't even need arbiters because we already have built-in understanding for them. But when a person that you love is shot violently in the middle of the street and nobody's taking care of the body in a way that you think, or maybe you don't even think that a human should be taken care of. And if you yell out an expletive language or you curse or you yell out in frustration, you cry out, people immediately want you to calm down. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's like, if you don't yell, I'm going to scream. So somebody better do something, because it is in this moment that healing can then become. And that's what the lament tradition is all about. Healing can come only after we lament, only after we get it off our chest, only after we have cried out. That's when the healing can come. And until then, it's just a false sense. But I wanted to read that, first of all, to acknowledge what people are saying, and also to show how Black activists and organizers are gathering, right? He didn't write that, or I did not record him having said that as if it wasn't something he was actually involved in. He and his community have decided, this is also a pastor, so it's part of what he understands as his calling, is to create space for people to have these moments. So what I would say is, yes, the sky is falling.
Yeah.
Yes, the government shutdown has happened today, and that means a lot of things. Yes, people are losing insurance. Yes, there's a list and several lists, that is identifying people who have said anything against the government. Yes, all of these things. And yet, just like Toni Morrison in Beloved reminds us to go out into the clearing, we have always been a people of the clearing. We have always been a people who take a moment, even while we're staring something dead in our face. And I think that that's our power. That's our healing, is the ability to see it and to step back from it, to create spaces where we draw a line that over there is happening out there. We're not ignoring it. We're not acting like it's not true, but there's something that while we are resisting that, we're also taking moments to heal within. And so that's what I would say is the word to offer to people, to don't underestimate the power of taking a moment to be in community, the power of taking a moment to hear with one another, the power of taking a moment for somebody that doesn't, where they don't have to perform, they don't have to act like they know that everything, they know the answer to everything. They don't have to act like they're not hurt, right? Or that they don't know if they can do it. These are the things, these are the moments that I think, even in the midst of scarcity, in the midst of designed scarcity, structural scarcity, these are the things that make a difference.
Yeah, I think that people, especially the news, they sensationalize rage, right? Particularly amongst Black people. But I see it as prophetic, right? I see it as create a fire.
Yes. Yes.
And what people are doing is using that creative fire, because I think I don't want to speak for everybody else. I mean, I have that rage. I am angry, right? That this is even happening beyond the government shutdown. That what I could go on and on. I don't want to be, the news tonight, but I'm going to tell you what the real deal is. But I feel that rather it being destructive for me, though, I feel it as creative fire. Right, I feel like this is something I'm going to use to forge new worlds, right? Where Black life, where we can breathe, right? And I think that I also see rage as resistance and healing at the same time.
So Vahisha Hassan has a piece where she talks about that. Can I read her piece?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So she talks about, because another activist, they were in the middle of a conversation about how to not let the fire burn you, from the inside out. And she writes, there are different types of fires, right? So if you take the metaphor all the way through, you got a grease fire, you have a wood fire, you have all kinds of fire, right? Like you have these different fires, and some of the fires are based on what's being consumed, how much oxygen. You just get into all these things. So I think we need to know then what type of fire we're in at that moment. I think you described that, sitting in this space of being a medical student within a system that doesn't want you to live. So for that particular fire, you can't come at that grease fire with water. So with your fire, what do you need for your fire to burn in the way that someone else is describing, so that you can keep it burning, but in an environment that's conducive to your burn? So they talked about, is it a kind of a fire that's supposed to destroy and raise everything so that something new can burn? And or is it the kind of fire that then illuminates and lets you see the pathway forward? And it might not be an either or. It might be it happens in parts and then it transforms, that something does absolutely have to be destroyed. And then is there a moment, because we don't want the fire to destroy us, right? then what are the ways in which we can then back up from it and understand what that rage is doing, so we can see what is it giving light to, the new thing that can become the way that allows us to walk through the fire and get on the other side of it, that we might not be consumed by it.
Yes, yes. That's powerful, because I'm thinking, without integrating rage into the healing work that we're going to be doing, that we risk trauma turning inward, right? Or spiritualizing our pain away. So much,
Mm-hmm.
so many people are doing that, right? And so, very powerful. Thank you for that. I want
Mm-hmm.
to ask you this. So, your
Mm-hmm.
book covers a decade of seismic change, right?
Yeah.
Ferguson, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, pandemic, and beyond. For you, Dr. Crumpton, what moments most transform your understanding of Black faith, grief, and resilience across that period?
Historically, it might have been somewhere in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm going to say somewhere in the pandemic, because the pandemic hit and everybody had to go home. Everybody had to go home. And then for a minute, everybody had to go home. And then in the middle of that, some people had to go back to work. They didn't have a choice. And so anybody who was in the medical field, anybody who was in certain forms of customer service, right, at the
Yeah.
grocery
Yeah.
store. And I
Yeah.
happen to live on the south side of Chicago, which at one point had, in my zip code, had the highest incidence of COVID. And these were people who didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like they had to go to work or they would lose their jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then in the middle of like people trying to survive the air,
Yeah.
you have people being killed. Like now, is it, huh? Like, and then we start hearing I can't breathe twice,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so for me, that was personally a moment where I realized the brakes are off of this train. Like, I'm not sure, what's gonna happen here. And it, as a person of faith, which I don't explicitly talk about faith in the book,
Yeah.
but for me, I had to start grappling with, is it okay to keep asking the same kinds of questions at this point of these Black activists and organizers that I started with?
Yeah.
And it's not helpful. It became a moral and ethical thing. It's not helpful for me to ask them how are they hurting. And that's when I made the turn as a researcher to say, what are you doing? How are you healing?
Yeah.
And so I think just the mass destruction of COVID and the audacity for racial animus to still raise up while everybody of every color and stripe was still was dying. That was a real pivotal moment for me.
Yeah.
To realize like racial animus is no joke. Like it is not, like it doesn't take a break. Even if, you know, people who are racist are also, dying from the same thing. It doesn't take a break. Like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe we should peel back. No, like racial
Right.
animus is like, oh, let's put our foot on the gas. Hmm. I kind of make a funny face about it, but I was like, that's something. That was a
Yeah.
big moment for me. And I had to ask the question in the middle of people of faith dying,
Yeah.
right? Because remember during the pandemic, out of ignorance for what the disease was doing, you had a lot of people who were praying that
Uh-huh.
it would, it would not pass this way, and it
Yeah.
wiped out generations.
Yes,
Like
it
there
did.
were denominational meetings that people didn't
Yes.
know or
Yep.
they weren't clear, and it took
Yeah.
out generations of leaders and
Did.
congregants. And so then
Yes.
that was a real kind of like I think I was clear, like, oh, I ain't going to church. Like that
Right.
I ain't gonna do it. But it
Absolutely.
did make me ask the question collectively, like, what's going on in our faith that we don't see, that this is not about God is going to take up some people and not others. This ain't that. This is like anybody could get it. And so that was
Yeah.
like a real faith moment for me.
And not to, I don't want to, you know, veer off, but I need to say, I remember when the pandemic came, and I remember maybe a couple of days before the announcement was made, I had to do a funeral. One of our longtime members had passed away, and I remember not feeling well before the funeral. So this is before March. So I remember not feeling well in February. I was very sick, as a matter of fact. And I was home alone. And I remember Bishop Flunder calling me and
Mm-hmm.
said, "Baby, I'm thinking about you. Are you okay?" And I said, "Mama, I'm so sick that I can't even lift my head off the bed." And she said, "Okay, who is anybody there?" I said, "Nobody is here."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "The person that lived upstairs was not home," because I knew that. And so we were talking. She said, "Is there anybody you could call?" I called. She called that person and said, "I want you to bring Bishop Vanessa all of this, whatever it is, and whatever's right, I'll pay it. Don't, other words, I'll give you your money back. Just go and get these things." They did that. They came, and I wasn't getting better as time went on. And then I remember laying down, and I was so weak. And I thought about a doctor friend that I knew, who was formerly a member of our church and had moved away. And I called him. Actually, I didn't call him. The other person called him, and they said, Pastor Vanessa's very sick. And he said, asked her, "Did I have all of these different elements in my house? What did I have these things?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, I'm going to bring one thing." He said, "I'm going to write the prescription in my name." And he said, "And I will bring it." When he came to the door of my house, he stood outside because he was an emergency medicine room doctor. And he said, "Vanessa, I don't know what this is, but whatever you do not come to the emergency room." I'll never forget
Yeah.
that. He bought me
Yeah.
medicine, but he said, "Whatever you do, you have enough here to make you well." And I remember getting well within a certain amount of days and then being able to go and do that funeral. But if it hadn't
Mhm.
been for that, I don't know.
And so what you raised, Bishop Brown, thank God for those people who cared
Yeah.
enough about you, who were able. And also one of the
Yes.
things that we noticed and that I write about and the activists and organizers talked about was the importance of like mutual aid. That's what you're talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Caring for
Yes.
each other. So when you asked me earlier about like, you say we should take time. This is that, right? Like, how
Yeah.
do we,
Yeah.
in the middle of scarcity, how do we take care of each other? How do we care for one another?
Yeah.
And that, what you just described, and that became a big thing. And let me just say also, activists and organizers have been doing this for generations, so it's nothing new.
Absolutely. No, that's
But
right.
what I will say is that for if you were born after the civil rights and Black power movements, this is the first time that in our lifetime we're living through it. We've always read
Absolutely.
about it or watched, we always had the record about it, but this is our first time
Yes. It's our first
living
time
through it. And so what's
living
happening,
through it.
um, the beautiful thing that is happening in our generation is that this is our opportunity to remember what was, to examine what was, to bring some things forward, not all, because I do talk about that also in the book. Now, some of the ways of being, that Black activists and organizers, they had to do certain things. They had to make certain decisions under duress,
Sure.
right? Under the
Yeah.
duress of
Yeah.
racism and violence and
Yeah.
things like that. Some of that we need, and the activists and organizers struggle with. What
Yeah.
all from the lessons of the past do I bring with me and what do I lay down? One of the things they continue to bring forward is mutual aid, showing up for one another, right?
Yes.
And that battles, again, that scarcity thing, it
Yes.
cuts it down to size, though we
It
know it's real.
does.
When we share what we have, and
That's
these
right.
networks of people, they share what they have. The fact that there was an
Mm.
ER doctor who was able to say, "I know something is not right. Don't come in here, but I can bring
Don't
you
come
this."
here.
This is what we've been doing for a long time. And these activists and
Absolutely.
organizers activate these networks. They talk beautifully about how they take care of one another, They take care of people they don't know, but they are in their
Yeah.
communities.
Yes.
And one of the beautiful things is that they're not going by, there's a, there's an abolitionist thread that runs through a lot of their work, and they expanded my
Yes.
understanding of what abolition is. Part of
Yes.
what one of their commitments is to not be punitive, right? So there
Yes.
are ways in which they taught me and that I share about their teaching about, if somebody has a need, you meet the need, period.
Yes.
If somebody's hungry, you don't ask them, what have you done? What haven't you done? That kind of a thing. There's no asking about the 9 million other times when you ask. The question is, do they have a need?
Yes.
Period. And the question is, who is it? Not which of the who. It's just who
That's right.
needs something,
Who is it?
right?
That's it.
And they're interested in all Black bodies, not just the straight Black bodies, not just the
That's
wealthy
right.
Black bodies, not just
That's
the
right.
politically correct, but every Black
Hmm.
body.
Every
And
black
so
body.
and that's one of the beautiful things that we saw during COVID that challenged a lot of what we were dealing with. That I think I heard you say in another, you all discussing another episode of Beyond the Gatekeepers, we've been here before. We've
Yes.
been here before a few years ago.
Hmm.
I didn't think we would be back here now,
Yeah.
but our generation has been through a version of this before. And there were some beautiful things that came out of the pandemic that we probably didn't think we would have to revive again, but they are the
Yeah.
things that I think are going to help us through the next few years and thereafter.
Yeah.
And that I'm grateful that people were willing to share and that I was able to capture in the book.
Awesome. Diane Rodriguez from Portland, Pastor Diane, thank you for being here. YouTube, Sean Jenkins from Atlanta, thank you for being here. Chuck Jones from California, thank you for being here. Grateful for all of your presence, and I hope that you're sharing. We'll give you opportunity. If you have a question for Dr. Crumpton, we want you to put the word question and then form your question for us. We also want you to know that she is giving away a book tonight. We're grateful for that. Make sure you put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, all one word. And we also want you to know that we want you to purchase the book. You should see that in your comment and chat sections from Mahogany Books in DC. So there's a specific place, Black owned bookstore, and we want us to support this Black owned bookstore as well. So again, we're inviting you to post your question. Please type the word question before it so that it can be easily seen. Dr. Crumpton, many activists today are navigating trauma, not just from systems of oppression, but from within movements themselves, right? What wisdom can you offer about repair, accountability, and staying in the work when harm happens amongst us?
Yeah, I think I want to start from the inside and then radiate out into the collective based
Go,
on what I
yeah,
heard.
please
One of the
do.
things that I noticed that they were struggling with was the sense of who they had to be as an activist based on the stories and legends that had been handed down to them. One of the
Yes.
subtitles in the book has to do with shouldering death. And so the notion that you feel a call to do something for your community, you feel a call to action, like the streets call you to this work. And the streets that are calling you are oftentimes covered in the blood of your people.
Yes.
And sometimes the blood of your people isn't just the community person, but also the activists and organizers who have shed blood, whose blood has been shed. Let me reshape that, whose blood has been shed. And so, how do you get into this work and stay in this work without leaning into believing that you have to give your absolute all and very last inch of your breath in order to do this work? Now, I know
Yes.
that does not go over well oftentimes when I say that. I'm here for it. It's fine. We can talk through it. The
Sure.
reason why I'm willing and stand by it is because I have watched activists and organizers examine what that means for their work long haul. And also, what does that mean for them while they're in the work? So before
Yeah.
we get into the collective, I want to talk about how they were really struggling with a sense of identity. Like, if to be an activist and organizer, if that definition of activism and organizing is essentially grounded in this notion of death. as a
Yes.
prerequisite, as a commitment, then at the center of it, death is the expectation. And you could be walking around dying every single day,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, spiritually. And there are also contributing factors that impact that experience.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, most activists and organizers are not doing this for a living. So a lot of them don't have adequate health care or access to
Right.
adequate health care. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of our grassroots organizations do excellent work, but oftentimes they don't have the resources to be able to provide
Mm-hmm.
folks with what they need. So that's
Yes.
step one. Step two, if that is the case, a lot of them are also working full-time jobs while also doing activism and organizing. And sometimes they're working several jobs to piecemeal the pieces that they need to be able to keep a roof over their head, which is stressful in and of itself. Add on top of that, you are now also, if you are involved in direct action, you are putting your body in the line of fire with police. And here in Chicago, that's like a real thing. Like on
Yes.
Tuesday, there were ICE agents and anybody
Mm-hmm.
else that our current administration called in. They descended on a housing complex,
I saw
right?
that.
And the
Yeah.
Broadview ICE detention center, like they are attacking the activists and organizers there. So these are real bodies that are on the
Yeah.
line. So I'm
Yeah.
talking about just these bodies being there. And then when you get a bunch of bodies together in a group, also known as a nonprofit, right, or a community organization,
Yeah.
all of those bodies and everything that those bodies have experienced are now trying, doing their level headed best to come together to do collective work, right? So
Yes.
before I even get to that second part about the collective, what I learned from the activists and organizers is that they chose to examine what they had been told about who it is they needed to be in this work.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of examining kind of these myths of martyrdom, this expectation that to care for yourself, to take time to care for yourself does not mean that it means you're taking time away from caring for others.
Right.
They examined that and said that that's not true. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It maybe was that way at other times and other generations. Let me just
Sure.
say that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
important to recognize we are at a different generation, still under duress, but not the same kind of duress as the generations that handed us notes on who we should be as activists and organizers, right?
That's
So they
right.
were
That's
working
right.
through that. They were
Yes.
examining that. They were saying, it's not a verb, but I'm going to make it a verb. They were saying kofa-ing that. They were examining what can we bring forward, and then also what can we let go of. And
Yeah.
then they brought that ethic into the collective work, right? And so
Yes.
part of that had to do with how do we decide who we're going to be to each other? What are, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say ground rules. That's not really the best, but what are the
Yeah, that's
community
okay.
covenants?
Mm-hmm.
What are the community covenants around how we're going to treat each other, right?
Yes.
What is our definition of dignity,
What is
right?
our
What
definition
did
of
we
dignity?
decide about how we're going to handle conflict, right? Doesn't mean
Yes.
that we all believe in the exact same things, but we got to identify some core pieces that
Yeah.
we agree on. And we got to
Yeah.
also decide how are we going to deal with when somebody steps outside of that. Is it that they stepped outside with, so we push them all the way out, which is also
Sure.
known as cancel culture, or
Yeah.
do we decide, okay, how a lot of the communities are committing to restorative practices and circle work, right? You've got a lot of them that we're talking about. When a conflict comes up, how do we deal with it? And I'm not talking about just little, there were the little conflicts like, I don't like you, you ain't call me
No.
when we said,
Sure.
there's that. But then there are like real big conflicts like
Really
violence,
big ones. Yes.
violence within the
Yes.
organization, physical
Yes.
assault, sexual assault, right? Real, real problems. And what I admired about them was not that they did it perfectly, but
Yeah.
that they did commit to how they were going to address the things, that they
Yes.
were going to deal in transparency, that they were going to hope for developing trust, that they were going to emphasize relationship, that they were going to center dignity for all,
Yes.
right? And that abolition wasn't just about the police, abolish the police, but abolition was about also not being punitive, but seeking
Yes.
justice within the community. And so
Yes.
they were doing hard work just as much as they were coming up with strategies for how to deal with outside and
Yes.
facing the police and facing structural injustice and direct actions and political advocacy. They spent just as much time and energy on who are we going to be to one another so that
Yeah.
we know each other when we get perhaps on the other side of at least this episode of where we are.
Yes. Wow. Powerful.
That's what I said when I
Um,
heard them. Wow.
yeah, no, because first of all, I like how you keep framing what I learned from them, not what you could teach them, but what you
I
learned from
started
them.
out
And
that way and it was awful. And then
that's
I learned,
important. I
don't do
think
that.
that was so good because yeah, I wanna say more without giving away stuff, but this I want to just say to the people, if you are doing any kind of activist work, working in any kind of nonprofit organization, any kind of agency, if you belong to a church, you want to get this book. It is a guide. This is how I see it, how I view it, and I'm going to be sharing it with people that I know will feel the same way. This is a guide to help us through this time right now. I'm not just saying it. I don't even really know Dr. Crumpton,
This
and
is
I
our
don't
first
have
time
to.
meeting. I'm very
Exactly.
grateful.
But I know great work when I read it, and I know what needs to be done for such a time as this. So I'm just going to encourage you all. Like, you may not win the book tonight. That's okay. Buy it for somebody, buy it for yourself. And remember, it's hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers if you're going to win it, but Mahogany Books if you're going to buy it. Okay. Now, I have 3 questions here that's
Okay.
from the audience. So to start with Minister David Tony, Minister David Williams, he asks, what does it look like to practice radical hope when every headline tries to convince us despair is the only option?
So on this one, I'm going to answer from myself and not as much from the book.
Please.
So I would say that every headline is something that somebody decided that they wanted to write. I used to work in news. I used to be a television news producer, and it's
Okay.
something that I wanted to write. If I gave something a super or a title, it's something I wanted to write. People write things all the time. That does
Yeah.
not mean that we have to center it in our thinking and in our faith.
Yes.
I mean, and it doesn't mean ignore what's there. Although I have made it a practice, I think twice before I click that little N for news button on my phone. I think twice in the morning before I do that. And I find
Yeah.
myself saying, you know what? Nah, I'm not going to start this way. No, not
Right.
today. So I would say I'm not suggesting that we stick our head in the sand. What I am
Sure.
suggesting is that we have to be conscious and decisive about where we're going to spend our energy. We
Yes.
don't actually have to study oppression and violence because we have had to survive it for so long. It is first nature for us to know what to do. What I
Yes.
think we do have to study is studying for the moments that delight us. And I know that sounds so ridiculous and so minuscule, but it is powerful. And
Yes.
delight, what I love about delight, now a friend of mine gave me a book by Ross Gay, talk about the book of delights, and I was reading it. And what I recognized is that the power of delight is that it is a surprise.
Yes.
So to be open to the surprises that give us a sense of uplift, even while we face what is happening, which means it's probably not going to happen that there's a massive bill to counteract the mess that just happened this week and everything's going, it's
Right.
probably not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
But there is a sense of delight in paying attention to the look on someone's face when you look at them and stop and say good morning. Or there was
Yes.
this beautiful little brown little girl today. I was in the grocery store and
Mm-hmm.
there was this beautiful little chocolate brown baby sitting in its basket at the grocery store. And she was so shiny brown and she was so beautiful. And that moment
Yeah.
mattered,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it
So
did.
it is overwhelming what we see in the news, and it is intentional to overwhelm us. And the question is, and Whatsoever is good, whatsoever is kind, whatsoever is worthy of praise, set your mind on these things. To set your mind on looking for the things that sustain us while we are fighting against it.
While we are fighting against it. Thank you. And they said thank you too in the chat. Here's another question. And so I'm not gonna say it's rooted in the book. All right. So it's here for you. It says, we're in a political pandemic now. So how do we as a people of color or even the LGBTQ community deal with the blatant attacks on us and our democracy?
So, first of all, in spite of, I'm not even going to go that route. We have to, while we delight, while we take time for ourselves, you can't just, and I have a friend that she was like, take a nap. I was like, yeah, take a nap. After you take your nap, you got to get back on the wheel, whatever is your wheel, right? And so activism and organizing and resistance looks different for everybody.
Yes.
So I'm not going to say that everybody has to go and join whatever the direct action is, or everybody, or there's only one way to resist. There's only one way to be politically engaged. There are multiple ways. I will say you need to vote. Now that I will say, can't take a break off from voting.
Right.
You must vote. And doing what you can to be politically involved in whatever way and measure that you can. It's not going to look the same for everybody, right? Everybody doesn't have the same passion. Everybody doesn't have, everybody doesn't have the same energy to do all of the things, but do one thing well, right?
Yeah.
Look within and see. And also, there's democracy, big D, but then there's also democratizing our daily experiences, right?
Yeah.
So there is democracy in terms of the politics and the political. There's also democratizing means also reevaluating the ways in which we move every day in hierarchies, right? If we start to disrupt that and disrupt the notion that someone has to be at the top so that and everybody else has to be at the bottom, that is not only a political thing, and it is also a political thing. So vote, but also democratize the ways in which we have kind of bought into and internalized ways of being oppressive, because politics is not just big P political. It's also in our everyday lives.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that. And I'm going to take this last question. Well, it's actually two more, but okay. Reverend Lee Arney. He is living in Las Vegas as a trans activist of color. And he says they are saying that they often find themselves being the only trans in the group or the only Black person. How do they get trans people of color motivated to fight for our rights? That's a big question.
It is. And what I will say is there are going to be times where you're going to be the only, and it is awful. It is awful for a lot of different reasons. And if your calling is to be the only in certain spaces, make sure you also have other spaces where you are not the only. Right? There are some things, like if that is your calling, if you decide that is where you need to be, do that. Right? Until it becomes different, until you can make room and find allies to help you make room for others. But what I will caution you against is also always being the only in the space. You cannot always be the only one who is speaking up for yourself. First of all, there is safety in numbers. Let me just say that. Even if there's only just one other person, you can't pick two people off easily, but you can pick off one by picking them apart piece by piece. What I would say is to make sure also that you're committed as you are able to have allies who will help you build capacity and expand your numbers where you are, where you're finding that you're the only one. But for the love of God, please do not only involve yourself in spaces where you are alone. That isolation is soul crushing. And I would also say that it's intentional. You know, sometimes people will say, well, we've checked off the box because we have this one trans person or whatever the fill in the blank, right? I would question how long and to what depth you would continue to make yourself available as the only, given a situation, if they're not demonstrating a willingness to move the needle, because you can end up being the only one intentionally, not by your own design. But there are ways in which organizations will be satisfied with also not only you being the representative, but also you taking the hits for being the only one.
That was great. Very good, Doctor.
Hope
Okay,
so.
as it relates to your book and all of the things that you shared tonight, which have been tremendous, but I know that there's something pivotal that you want us to know from this book. There's something direct that you want us to know from this book, and I want to hear, as you give your final words, something that you're really wanting the people, that's resonating with you even now, that you're wanting the people to know, based on where we are right now, based upon what you wrote then, and based upon where we are now.
Yeah. I think I want to focus on the difference between healing and cure. The book is titled, the title is Resistance and Healing in Black Movement
Yes,
Spaces.
yes.
And early on in the book, because people have asked me often, what do you mean healing? How can you heal when the hits keep on coming, essentially? And what I wrote about is that healing is about attending to the symptoms that come up when we have been harmed. And there are some harms that cause scars that require ongoing attention. They
Yes.
never seem to stop bringing us back and requiring our attention. So we stop and we give them the care they deserve. We attend to our vulnerabilities. And just because we have to attend to them doesn't mean we aren't healed. It means that there isn't yet a cure. And we have to continually give ourselves care. Again, healing and cure are different.
Healing and
Cure
cure.
is the ability to identify and completely end the source of a thing that causes problems.
Come
This
on.
book doesn't even begin to address the work of curing racism and its related oppressions. This book is about Black healing. To be
Yes.
sure, though, on its own, healing as only naming and attending to the symptoms of what causes harm is an insufficient response to Black pain, because it leaves the work of fending off new and forthcoming threats undone. That
Yes.
requires relentless and ongoing resistance against the source, its impact, and future opportunities to further that harm. So healing is about attending to what hurts, while also somehow managing the wherewithal to mount resistance when the threats don't stop.
And before I let you go, because I
Mhm.
can't now, you got me. This one more thing.
Okay.
You talk about rest,
Yeah.
and I think that, no, let me not say it. Let me make an I statement. I think that not enough, that we are not talking about rest enough, particularly where we are right now. And I want you to say more about rest as resistance.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about Trisha Hersey, and I'm thinking
Yes.
about
Think about Trisha.
Black liturgies. I'm thinking about a few books. And I'm also thinking about the fact that while we are having this conversation right now, I have COVID. Just found out
Yeah.
today. And part of me is thinking about, and through this book, it has to think about why is rest so complex? And I think some of it is that it can be dangerous to rest. We fear and feel, and it is a truth that it can be dangerous to rest. On Tuesday, there were people who in the mid wee hours of the morning, they were resting and sleeping, and ice came down on the building.
Yeah.
And so when we are bombarded by not just memories, but actual stories right now of people's homes and spaces being violated, it makes us feel like we have to stay alert at all times, which is a trauma response. It is so rest is complicated, is what I want to start by saying. And I mentioned that I had COVID because I was like, oh, I just have a little sinus infection. I wasn't paying attention to what my body was trying to tell me.
Sure.
And I think many of us have been taught for various different reasons that we just brush off what is happening in our bodies. And what I want us to do is to start paying attention more closely to what our bodies are telling us, and also to decide what rest looks like. It's not the same for everybody.
That's right.
Right? But what rest ought to do is give you a space for your nervous system to reset itself. It ought to give you an indication of where you are, where you have been, and make you aware of where your body needs to go.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick with just the body and not the mind, because sometimes the mind can do so many things. And unfortunately, we will pay attention to what our mind is doing and not pay attention to the primary signs from our bodies. Our bodies, things happen in our bodies a lot faster and ahead of us processing it in our heads.
Yeah.
So I want us to start paying attention. And we've often been taught, and life has often taught many of us, to not listen to our bodies, but to pay attention to what our bodies are inviting us to, and to take baby steps. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. You don't have to. And maybe sometimes people don't have the resources to be like, I'm going away from a weekend. Everybody can't do that. It might be as simple as unplugging from social media for the time that you set. It might not be the same for everybody. Everybody might not be able or willing to unplug for a day or a week. Even if it's just for an hour, start small, but do something that allows a part of your body to rest.
To rest. Powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Crumpton. I don't even know another word to say, because, again, I'll go back to, this is what we need for such a time as this. So I am grateful.
So grateful.
I'm going to, I already had a conversation with someone. It was like, who you going to have on? I said, I'm going to tell you about it when it's over. And I want to make sure I send them that text so they can know. I want to send a clip. You know, people can go back to Beyond the Gatekeepers, the page, or Bishop Flunder's page, and review this. You can use it as well. I just want people to know that this is something that's out, that they need to get it, and they need to be talking about it because it's important. So I want to thank you for your time on tonight. Before we leave, we have a couple of announcements that we want to make, and then we're going to do the book giveaway.
Yes, book giveaway.
Yes. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's a time to honor survivors, remember those we've lost, and raise awareness about early detection and access to care. Let's continue to uplift our sisters, siblings, and communities with love, advocacy, and action. Schedule your mammogram, encourage someone else to do the same, and wear your pink proudly. If you or someone you know needs information or support, please contact the American Cancer Society at 1-800-227-2345 or Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Helpline 1-877-465-6636. It is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so we stand with survivors, remember those who did not make it, and commit to breaking cycles of silence and harm. Love should never hurt. Let's build communities of safety, accountability, and healing. If you or someone you know needs help, reach out. You are not alone. For immediate, confidential help, National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-SAFE. That's 800-799-7233. Or you can text START to 88788 or visit thehotline.org. As a justice-informed platform, Beyond the Gatekeepers lifts up these vital movements for health, safety, and equity, reminding us that faith and freedom demand our care for every body, every survivor, and every community. If you have been watching Beyond the Gatekeepers, you know that we are in our 5th year. Beyond the Gatekeepers, where we have faith, justice, and dialogue. We ask that you support our broadcast by sending a donation. Go to PayPal at www.paypal.me/TFAMJustice. That's www.paypal.me/TFAMJustice. And we have a book to give away tonight. And I'm hoping that you put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers in. Just so you know, Dr. Crumpton, Amos Pace says, great conversation from Delaware. Hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. Please make sure you put it in. And Pastor Sue is going to spin that wheel so we can get us a winner. Our winner tonight is Dave Tony. Really,
All right.
Minister David Williams is he's an artist and a singer as well. So,
Nice.
Minister David, we say thank you so much, and you'll send me your address, and I will get it to Dr. Crumpton, and she'll get that book out to you. Thank you, everyone, for watching this show on tonight. You still have time to share with someone else so they can be a part of the conversation. Dr. Crumpton, what a joy. What a joy to have you with us. And I know that we will see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my honor, truly.
Everyone, have a wonderful evening. God bless. Good night.